Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Knife Chats with Tobias.
Hi everybody. I got another bayonet to show you. This is one that I have been looking for quite some time, and I don't know where I'm going to be going with this because there are so many things I want to tell you. So this might turn into a bit of a ramble and might be a little bit disjointed because I am really thrilled to be able to talk to you about this one. And the folks on Kitty's Corner saw a little bit about this probably about a month ago, because I picked this up before I actually went to Smoky Mountain Knife Works, did a quick video on it, gave some basic information to the folks at Kitty's Corner, and then wanted to talk about it, but ended up going to SMKW. Then I messed up my leg, just could not get down here, so I have been dying to talk about this bayonet, and it is one of those that I have looked for a long time. Now, it is also one that if I was willing to pay through the nose, I could easily get one of these, but I did not want to pay through the nose for this. I wanted to get it at a decent price. They easily, one in this kind of condition, typically on eBay, goes in the $150 range or more. The only negative on this is the particular tang stamp on there. That might be something that would draw the price down a little bit, but this knife is absolutely gorgeous. Well, let's get it out of the sheath and look at that blade. I mean, the blue blade is just gorgeous on there. The person who had it knew how to take care of it. It is just great. It looks fantastic. And no rust on it or anything else. It is also not one that has been, the grinder with sandpaper and, somebody buffing it and everything else. None of that has happened. Somebody just kept this in the sheath with a ton of oil in there. And the sheath, well, you can see that it has a little surface patina going on, and you can kind of feel it. You can see also the portion that was protected by the leather frog that is missing. Now, I don't know what happened to the leather frog. I don't care. I picked up a replacement frog already. Yeah, it's a replica frog, but it's a really good replica frog. And everything about this is just great. It is a Type 30 bayonet from Imperial Japan. And this is one of the icons. This is, especially for World War II, this is iconic World War II bayonet. And it was one of those things that, the service members who were serving in the Pacific, this is one of the cherished things that they always wanted to bring back. They, grab a bayonet and bring back a bayonet. The Marines were selling them to the Navy and everyone else, so everyone wanted a Type 30 bayonet to send back, and when they got it, they always wanted it with the J Quillion here, or Quillon, or J Guard, whatever you want to call it. That's the one with the hook. That's what a lot of people just call it, a hooked guard. But you can see this knife. It is in really good shape. Yeah, it's got plenty of patina, but no real rust or anything. No cracking in the wood or anything like that. A nice guard. It is a little bit crude, but nothing fantastically crude. And the blade is in just perfect shape. Just excellent shape. And that's what I saw this as, like, for that price, I will grab it. Now, I have been looking for one of these for 20, 30 years. Off and on, at least. I mean, when I go to like a flea market or something, I would always be looking for a bayonet of such type. And also, if I go to an estate sale or something, I'd go looking for one of these bayonets of this type. And then when eBay came about, I started looking for these on eBay, but the prices on eBay were absolutely ridiculous. It's like, I'm not paying that. That's like going to the antique store and buying one in an antique store where the person has, I wasn't going to pay full-blown retail for this. Just let me put it that way. And I should also mention one other thing about this. Several years ago, I also had the opportunity to get one of these, and it would have cost me nothing at all. Matter of fact, this and a German butcher bayonet, I could have had both of them added to my collection at the same time. However, the circumstances just wasn't right for me because the bayonets actually belonged to a very good friend of mine. I mean, a childhood friend, a person I had known for basically since I was 12 years old. I mean, longtime friend who had passed away, and this bayonet and a German butcher bayonet was among the knives that he had. Now, most of the knives he had were basically knives that he had just found here and there. He wasn't a true knife collector or anything like that, but those two bayonets were the pride of his collection, that Type 30 bayonet and the German butcher bayonet. And I believe that both of those bayonets actually predated him. I think those bayonets belonged to his father before they belonged to him. And I think the Japanese bayonet might have actually come back from my friend's father had served in the Korean War, so he might have came about one at that time. And so when the family offered the bayonets to me, because they knew I collected bayonets and everything, I was very tempted to take them, but I just looked at it and go, no, these really need to go to his son. His sons need these bayonets, and so one son took the Type 30, and the other son took the German butcher bayonet. And to this day, I know I made the right decision. That some things need to stay with the family, and they may not have meant that much to the sons at that time, but hopefully as time goes on, they will think about them, and it'll be a good memento to remember their father, because they meant something to their father. In any case, that's where I'm at with that. And it's also one of the things that, when we always talk about if this knife could talk, we think about it that way, but then so often we end up getting these knives from some place like eBay or a pawn shop or a flea market or something like that. And that's also part of the story of the knife, that it was a knife that meant something to someone, but eventually was nothing but a quick $20, $30, $50 to somebody else. And that could very well be what ends up with many knives in our collections, is they will not mean nearly as much to people past us. One of those sad things when you look at these knives. But anyway, let's move on from that. I'm trying not to be a downer on here, but it was one of the things that went through my mind when I saw that those knives. It's like, man, I really, really want them, but they really belong with the family. And we need to try and, when you're out there looking for those knives, if it is like a friend or family, or a friend of the family or something like that, and they're saying, hey, you should ask them, well, did so-and-so actually say, give it to me, or is this something that really should go on to his children? And and if it really does come down to, no, the children have already looked at it, they're not interested, do you want it or not? That's when you say thank you and take it graciously. But try and always try and get it to stay in the family if at all possible. Let's just put it that way. All right, enough blathering about that. Let's move on with what this is. What I can tell you is where the knife was made, and I can tell you that from the Tang stamp there. And also the fact that this person who was selling it also knew it was made in this arsenal. And the arsenal is the Jensen arsenal. The Jinsen Arsenal is actually located in Korea, just south of Seoul, in this little town known as Incheon. And anyone familiar with the Korean War knows about Incheon. It's basically the city where MacArthur landed to do his left hook and retake South Korea from the North Koreans during the Korean War. And well, it's a pretty well-known city, and the arsenal was one of the largest arsenals in Korea at the time. And a lot of people assume that because it's a Japanese bayonet being made in a Korean arsenal, that slave labor was employed, and so basically you got really cheap bayonets coming out of Korea being made by slave labor. But the dynamics of Korea and Japan during World War II are not as cut and dry as, say, the dynamics of like occupied Poland or occupied Czechoslovakia or occupied France during World War II, because Japan's sphere of influence over Korea started all the way back in 1876. And there was quite a few Koreans who were quite happy with the Japanese being in their country. It basically started in 1876 that, well, Japan decided, well, Japan actually, it even starts before then, but let's get starting with just the Japan-Korea thing, because otherwise this could go back forever. Basically, in that area of Korea, there were three superpowers wrangling for control. One of them was China, the other was Russia, and the final one was Japan. Japan really started getting a move on when it opened up to Western trade, thanks to Admiral Perry. Now, Korea remained an isolationist country, but Japan thought otherwise. It wanted Korea to be more involved with trade because it had a lot of natural resources. So Japan kind of got involved. Well, Japan and China decided to have this first Sino-Japanese war, in which China lost. So China was out. China was no longer pestering Korea anymore. So a lot of Japanese or a lot of Koreans were like, "Thank you. You know, now we don't have to deal with the Chinese anymore." Yeah, they still had to deal with the Japanese, but there were also Russians who were being a problem. And then there was the Russo-Japanese War, and Japan won again. Russians were out of the way. So now we're up to around 1905 or so. Russia is out of the picture. The only people in the area that have any kind of influence is Japan. And Japan signs a treaty of protection with Korea. They're going to protect Korea from China and Russia. Good things going on there, right? Except it's kind of one-sided because Japan also wants to do a little bit of colonizing in the area. And basically by 1910, there's a new treaty signed and Japan basically annexes Korea. And so now it's actually an official colony of Korea starting in 1910. Now there's a lot of Koreans who are not happy with that, but there's just as many Koreans who are benefiting from it. They're actually making money off of it. They're benefiting from the various programs, so on and so forth. So you have a mix of people. There are some who are quite happy because they're making quite a bit of money, getting new power. Others who are not quite as happy because they're oppressed. And then there's a good chunk in the middle that they're just happy there's no war going on. So you know what? It's fine. It's almost kind of like the United States during the Revolutionary War, where 1/3 of the people were all for the revolution, 1/3 were loyalists to the throne, and then you had the big bunch in the middle who's like, just leave me alone and let me plant my food. You know, it was kind of that in Korea at the time. Matter of fact, by the time the next China-Japan war breaks out, now we're into the 1930s, there are actually Koreans who are serving in the Japanese army. The thing is for the most part, the Japanese still treat the Koreans as second-class citizens. They don't trust them as much, and they also give them the really crappy assignments sometimes, the ones where they're not going to quite live too long. Like you lead the first rush. You can get, so the machine guns can waste their bullets on you, we'll follow you, that kind of thing. At the same time, though, there's quite a few Koreans who are in the Korean government who are working with the Japanese, who are prospering during that time. And you also have the factory owners and stuff who are possibly Korean, but they have a good Japanese connection, so they're doing okay. So it isn't like everyone in Korea hates Japan and it's truly slave labor, because there's quite a few Koreans who are actually serving in the Japanese army. And there's also an interesting side note is once the Korea becomes independent after World War II, in both the North and South Korea, a lot, especially in South Korea, quite a few people who end up becoming military leaders in the Korean army, as well as political leaders in Korea, had served in a very similar function while under Japan rule. So there are generals in the Korean army who had actually been generals in the Japanese army. So that's the difference. It isn't like, boom, they all hated each other. So these were not necessarily poorly made bayonets, as you can tell from just the history of the area at the time. And if you look at this, you can also see that it is quite well made. We can kind of date this a little bit, and part of the way we can date it is by this guard here, because the guard is a J guard, and Japan stopped making the bayonet, the Type 30 bayonet, with this type of guard in 1942. That was the year they were transitioning from the J guard to just a straight guard, because it was cheaper to make the straight guard. So this was made no later than 1942. I suspect from its condition and everything that this was probably made in the 1930s. So possibly before World War II, but more likely somewhere, say 1936 to 1942, somewhere in that period, because of the quality of the wood still on there and everything else. It's just in excellent shape, and the fact that the blade still has the original bluing on it. So it's really cool. The sheath, or the scabbard, also in excellent shape, but you can see there is a definite coating of patina on there, except where the guard was, or the frog was. Now, did not come with a frog. I'm assuming the frog rotted away. They were made with cheap leather. If I had the frog, I would know a little bit more about the age of it. But I do have a replacement frog, and they were made in leather, like you see here. And we can go ahead and attach it to the scabbard. Slip in the scabbard, you see the little throat up here. This is where you hook it in, and you have a little buckle here. Slide it on up, push this through. Okay, I got it snugged on up there, and you pass it down, and then you're just buckling in. It's just got one little hole for the buckle, but that does let you know that it's tight enough. And then it has two loops for the belt, which actually is kind of interesting because that allows it to get a bit of a curve whenever it's on your hip. And then the goes in, and there you have the complete thing. The scabbard, the frog, and the bayonet. Now, not sure how much I've already said about this. It is a Type 30 bayonet, which a lot of people assume means that it came out in the year 1930, but that is not at all the case. The Japanese, when this bayonet was being introduced, the year of the Type 30 refers to the year of the emperor, and in this case it was made during the Meiji Empire, and it would have been made in the 30th year of the Meiji Empire, the 30th year of his reigning, and that would have been 1897. So that's when this first came out, 1897. And it was used with the Type 30 rifle that came out in the same year, and that rifle was in 6.5 millimeter. Now later they came out with the Type 38 rifle, also in 6.5 millimeter, and that rifle would end up serving through World War One. Yeah, the Japanese actually were serving or were fighting in World War One, and they were on the side of France and England. They actually were attacking Japanese shipping and also some Japanese concerns in the Pacific during World War One. But then also, obviously, this was serving in the Second Sino-Japanese War. And well, it obviously served throughout World War II, and that's where the Americans ran into it, and where so many of them became souvenirs that ended up coming back to America. Overall, it's a classic bayonet, and this is also the inspiration for the British. The British Pattern 7 bayonet was based off of this. The one used on the Mark III short magazine Lee Enfield rifle that first came into service way back when, but served throughout World War One and into World War II. Now, in matter of fact, the versions of the short magazine Lee Enfield continued to be in service with Australia even after World War II, and remained with the Indian Army and the Indian police forces well into the 1990s. And they continued to use a bayonet similar to this, which I have shown before. This is the one that Eric from Slick Slicers gave me, and you can see how these bayonets are very similar, with the exception of the guard. Now, the original short magazine Lee Enfield bayonet also had a J guard like this, but they shortened it much earlier. They shortened it during World War II. They shortened it during World War One because they already found that this was kind of a waste. But the Japanese continue to use that J guard all the way into World War II. Now, the big difference between the Pattern 7 and the Type 30 is in the length of the blade. The Pattern 7 for the British has a blade about 2 inches longer, and also has a larger handle for a European style hand, or a larger European hand. You can see that right there. But otherwise, they saw this and they said, nope, that's it. They saw plenty of bayonets. They looked at the American bayonet, they looked at French bayonets, they looked at German bayonets, but they settled on the Type 30 bayonet. And several other countries also used a bayonet similar to the Type 30, because it was just, it was like the ideal sword bayonet. The only difference would be the length of the blade or the length of the handle, but the general design was used by many countries. But the original was the Japanese Type 30, and it still is one of those bayonets that does every bayonet collection need a Type 30 bayonet? Obviously not. What if all you do is collect Russian bayonets, or what if all you do is collect American bayonets? Then do you need a Type 30? Obviously no. But if you want a really cool bayonet, then and if you are looking internationally, then yeah, a lot of people want that Type 30 bayonet. I know I did. And also of note, during World War II, this was on the Arisaka rifle, and that rifle was longer than the M1 Garand. And this is a long bayonet too, and so the when during an encounter, if you were doing hand-to-hand fighting or if you were doing a bayonet duel with those rifles and everything, this was a formidable weapon and something that a lot of people feared. And the Japanese were a blade society. The idea of fighting with this on the end of their rifle was something they were keen to do. And Marines had their hands full with that. And especially considering the M1 rifle was shorter. And, well, this is a replica, but you can see bayonet length is about the same. So this is the original M1 bayonet, actually the M1905 bayonet. Like I said, this is just a replica, but it gives you an idea of how big they were. And the thing is with the rifle, the Japanese actually had about a 2 or 3 inch advantage in reach with this bayonet on their rifle compared to this bayonet on an M1 rifle. And then in 1943, this bayonet happened. This has only got a 10-inch blade instead of a 16-inch blade. And this is what the U.S. Army switched to. And that is why the Marines and soldiers in the Pacific did everything they could to hold on to this bayonet. Because, 6 inches more stabbing distance when somebody's coming at you with basically this thing meant 6 inches more confidence that you were actually going to be able to win that duel. So these the longer bayonet, when facing a long bayonet, was a psychological thing that people were just looking for. And this was something that gave a person a lot more courage, having that long bayonet. And why the Marines ended up, and also soldiers serving in the Pacific, wanted to hang on to their long bayonets. I've also heard stories that people with the M1 carbine in the Pacific, well, the original M1 carbines did not have a bayonet stud. There was no way to attach a bayonet to it. But what they would do is they would have someone in the shop attach a bayonet lug that would fit the Japanese Type 30 bayonet, and then they would round these out a little bit, make the hole a little bit bigger so that they could actually attach this to an M1 carbine. They would also do that with the other M1 bayonets, but they would take captured Japanese bayonets and affix them to an M1 carbine so that if they needed to fix bayonets, at least they had something on their carbine. And these are not light. This is like at least a third the weight of a loaded M1 carbine. But when you're short, and when you have a short rifle and no bayonet, and somebody's coming at you with a bayonet, you'll do whatever you can to get a bayonet on the end of that rifle, even an M1 carbine. So this bayonet ended up serving on both sides in some ways, and it wasn't always just as a souvenir. Anyway, as you can tell, this is one of those bayonets that I've been longing to get. I finally got one, and I'm very happy to have it in my collection. Stick around, I'll throw in some slides at the end here. Talk to you again soon.
take just a second to thank you once again for dropping by and spending a few minutes here at Knife Chats with the Pious. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate any comments that you leave. So please remember to give me that thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode is up and running. Thanks again for dropping by. Really do appreciate your time here.